President Trump signed an executive action on April 15th titled Lowering Drug Prices, Putting America First Again. And there are some definite wins for the pharmaceutical industry, and there are some losses for the pharmaceutical industry. Provisions in the executive order won't go into place just like that. Some of the provisions within it, like the pill penalty, will require congressional action. The pill penalty is a provision in the Inflation Reduction Act, which calls for small molecule drugs like pills, these are like tablets, things you would ingest, to have their pricing negotiated in a manner that's different from the way biologics, like injectables, for example, are negotiated. The Inflation Reduction Act specifically mandated that small molecule drugs are eligible for price negotiations 7 years after FDA approval, and then those new prices would go into effect 9 years after approval, versus the amount of time that biologics have 11 years post FDA approval, with the negotiated prices taking effect 13 years after approval. And what President Trump's executive order does is it makes those two things the same. So for the pharmaceutical industry, that's a win. If they invest in new drug development in a pill formulation, they'll have a longer window of price protection. The order also calls on the FDA to speed up the approval process for generics, biosimilars, combination products, and second-in-class brand name medications. That's happening at the same time as the FDA staff who does these approvals has been cut dramatically. In another win, the order also calls for more transparency in pricing for PBMs. These are pharmacy benefit managers. They're middlemen in between the pharmaceutical manufacturers and the consumers. And big pharma companies have been blaming these middlemen for high drug costs for quite a long time. So this they would view as a win. On the loss side, the Inflation Reduction Act called for a 22% savings bar, and President Trump has promised to improve on that benchmark, so looking for savings rates greater than 22%. Another loss, the potential to import drugs. The order says that within 90 days, the FDA is tasked with taking steps to streamline and improve Canadian drug importation programs. Another loss is some increased scrutiny President Trump has called for on pharmaceutical companies to reduce anti-competitive behavior. Exactly this new scrutiny will look like isn't clear. And finally, in the loss category, for calls to look for opportunities for payment reform. President Trump's order gives the Health and Human Services a year to come up with a plan to test new payment models. This is just the very beginning of what I'm sure will be a very lengthy process for addressing high pharmaceutical costs.